We're talking critique do's and don'ts today, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger. I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Christina Catena, and I write Christian dystopian fantasy.
And we're all still praying for our fourth host missing in action, Miss Rhonda Hagerman. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back from camp, you two ladies. Did you get your circadian rhythm all reset or whatever, being out there in the woods?
I don't know if I did that, and I don't know how woodsy it was.
It's a beautiful campground, though.
I love it there. I love our new trailer. Fifth wheel is great. We got a lot of it back done. I guess I'll just fall into my what's up.
Sure, yeah.
We bought this fifth wheel that the lady had tore everything, like all the doors off and everything, because she was going to remodel it. And then her job changed, and anyways, she had to sell it. So we got it for a smoking deal because I guess nobody else wanted something that looked tore apart, and we were fine with it. But with my mom passing away, I didn't get everything done on it, but I got enough done. We got it set up and we camped, and it was great. So everything was awesome, and took the dogs with us. That was kind of difficult, but
yeah. How old is your puppy? Like, because she
8
would still
months
be a
old.
puppy, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but she doesn't look like it, and we haven't trained her to not bark at everybody.
Oh,
and
boy.
That was the biggest problem. Yeah, but it was fun. We had a great time.
She didn't like me.
No, it's not that she doesn't like people. It's she's afraid. Even
Yeah.
the vet's like, she has some major anxiety. You need to get her around people more often. Well, what she does when she's around people is she barks, and it sounds vicious. Like, it literally like is like, "Arr!" And it's just because she's so scared. And I'm like, I don't think she'll bite you, but she's scared. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's never done that.
Bite.
But when they're scared, right? And so that was the
Yeah.
other thing that was a stress to me. It's like, gosh, if there was one little kid that would not leave her alone. Like, I literally kept putting myself between her and this little girl. I'm like, where are your parents? I'm like, and Molly was all scared, and Molly's huge, by the way, huge.
Mhm.
And I kept saying, no, you cannot pet her. She's still a puppy, and she's not trained yet. Oh, she'll be fine. Like, and she's like, oh, I will just be really nice to her. I'm like, no. And I kept like pushing her away. It was terrible. And I'm like, because if she bit someone, they could force us to put her down. You know, it was like one of those situations. So I'm like, ugh. So anyway.
My granddaughter's babysitter's daughter just got mauled by a dog and had to have facial surgery.
Oh, it's horrible. Oh,
Yeah.
golly.
She was Athena's age too, so
we're signing up for dog obedience, so to get her some proper training, because
we did that with a dog of ours, and it was worth every penny.
It is. We did with one other dog we had too. Our little ones we didn't, and I wish we did, but they're very mild mannered. But this dog's just too big. Like, she does things because she thinks it's fun, and it's painful. You know, so it's like we need to teach her.
She is pretty big for an 8-month-old dog.
For an 8-month-old dog, she's pretty big.
Yeah, we when we had puppies, we take them and pass them around at the American Heritage Girls troops when they were real small. But if you're not a part of something like that, and what are you going to do? Take it to the park and be like, people, please come pet my dog. You know what I mean? The socializing part is real hard.
Well, we've had her out in our yard, in our neighborhood, and it's a little bit better here, but she just needs training, I think, is what it is. So a professional needs to help. We need professional help.
You can buy stress jackets too for dogs, I've heard. People buy them for dogs that are afraid of the fireworks and storms and stuff.
Straight jackets for dogs?
Stress jackets.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
It's kind of like a weighted blanket, but for a dog.
Yeah, I want to wear a weighted blanket like all day at work. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, maybe they have like a stress jacket for a Saint Bernard or something that would fit.
Oh, it's amazing. All right, well, I'll do my what's up next. I have a quote from Plato, who was pre-Stoicism, but the Stoics gleaned a lot from him, I suppose. And it is, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark, The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Which I thought was super great. And then as I was researching who said it, because I heard it before I went and looked it up, I found this other quote, which is not from a Stoic. It's from some modern Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Maybe y'all have heard of her. People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. And so then I took those, and of course, I like to parallel it with scripture, right? So the first scripture is 1 John 1:5. This then is the message we have heard of him and declare unto you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. And of course, the next verse, you are the light of the world. And I just, this whole concept of light and darkness and all of that, I thought was really impactful and made an impression on me today. So I thought I would bring it all to y'all. What's up with you, Miss Bambina?
Well, I also went camping, and the plan was that my daughter and son-in-law, my granddaughter, my son Christopher, and I were all going to go camping for the week of camp meeting. But Adam and Amber got the COVID and couldn't come. And Christopher is not really good with kids. He's a 19-year-old boy. So it was me and Athena. And she's an extrovert, like to the max, bringing back some 80s lingo. And I am not. And she mentally exhausted me. She actually, and if anyone follows me on Facebook, you already saw this, but she said to me one day, Grandma, can we go ride around on the golf cart until we find somebody we know? And I was like, girl, you have no idea how many people I know on this campground, and that still sounds terrifying.
Like if I had to go visit,
if I know there's like a person in a specific spot that wants to talk to me, then I'm fine. But to just like go around and like, hey, do you want to talk to us?
No. You'd much rather just sit at your fire, and if somebody wants to come to you, right? Did you have a fire at all this week?
No, I just.
Isn't that weird?
I did not have the energy to think about. You know, that's my husband usually does that, and he couldn't come because he had to work. So I just didn't have the energy.
Similar for me too. So my husband works nights, so he wasn't really there for the evening stuff. He was there for like during the day. And we were supposed to host a youth group fire at our camper, and then it got rained out, so we didn't have that. But we spent most of our time across the little dirt road at a camper of my friend Stephanie's in-laws. He's a retired pastor, and his wife, and gosh, they were just so great. They just like welcomed us like as family, you know, like they've met us before, but like they really knew my kids, right? Like they knew because Stephanie's daughters are friends with my daughters. And as soon as they saw Phoebe, they're like, oh, that's who you are. Like I've been introduced to this couple several times and they never remember me. But
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
You're Amber's mom. Like
I'm very forgettable.
20 years.
Yeah, I've learned this. I'm very, very forgettable. But my kids are not. So anyway, They were so kind. We just had such a great week. And I just went over to their fire like all the time. I never had to make one, but it was a different kind of camp meeting. I felt like this. I loved it. I had a great time. My girls enjoyed themselves, but it just felt different this year. So
yeah, that's what I did. And our neighbors behind us, they have like 3 lots, and they have like a fancy stone fire pit and stuff, and they're very friendly. So I hung out with them a couple nights at their fire. And then there's this family called the Mangiapanis. Their name literally means eat bread in Italian.
Awesome. I like them already.
They're great. They're so great. And they have a bunch of kids. And she's like, oh, come over to our campfire. And she always has this big table with like all this s'more stuff, like Hershey bars. Yeah, but peanut butter cups and like all these different kinds of marshmallows. So like Athena loved going over there and having s'mores with them.
That's the fun thing is like when everybody brings all the stuff out, right? Like I went over to Reverend and Mrs. Kyle's campfire I had put together like a s'more basket. So I just only had to grab it and take it. But I had Reese's peanut butter cups in there too. And my girls had bought the giant marshmallows, and all the kids were like, yeah. So I didn't feel so bad always like crashing, because I was bringing, like, she had all kinds of stuff too, but I brought some stuff. So
And I can't eat s'mores because marshmallows have animal product in it. So,
I'm not supposed to.
and milk chocolate has dairy. So I had dates, pitted dates that I cut open, and I put almond butter and dark chocolate chips in there. And you put on the skewer and you put it over the fire. So good.
That does sound really good.
You know,
all right,
this
now I'm getting
podcast,
hungry
yes, I was
and want to
just
go
gonna
camping.
say, lunch is like
How much
still-
longer? Are we done yet?
Yeah, that
I'm ready to
concludes
go.
this episode.
You know, if you want to skip critiquing my,
Oh
we could just
yeah.
skip it. We don't have to do it.
No, don't say that. Now, okay, so that's a great kind of like a
Segue,
transition.
yeah,
But
mhm.
first of all, hi to everybody that's talking in the chat. I know we've been it's a weird show today so far, but hello, Gigi. Shell's here as well. Hiya. Gigi says she loves grandbaby stories. But that's a great transition too, Tina, though, because this is the scariest thing about being in a writing group, is to put your writing out there. And I know that I've shared it before. The first time we had our writing group, and it was bigger. We had, was it seven people in our group. Like, as soon as like I passed out my writing, all of a sudden, like, I didn't think about it. And then all of a sudden I passed it out. I was like, all of a sudden my heart started racing, and I'm not shy. Right. So, and then Jamie, who does audiobooks, and we just met, and she's sitting next to me. She goes, I'll read it for you. And I'm like, okay. I'm thinking that's gonna be better, right? I don't have to read it out loud. It was worse, because now I can't I can't hide behind and just read. Like, I'm sitting there listening to somebody else read my words, and that had never happened. Now
And
here I am.
you can't change the errors that you see as you're reading
Yes.
because somebody else is reading it.
And it is a very surreal thing. Several years later, like now, it's not a big deal. Thousands of people have read my books. So but when that first time happens, somebody who's reading your thing, like you're there, they're watching you and you're watching them. It's terrifying.
Well, and to make it worse, the point of them looking at it is to offer feedback. This is not like our typical feeding of the backs. When we get together every week with you all, we sprint and then we give only positive feedback. And the trick is to give and receive the more difficult feedback graciously. And that's really hard to do if you are someone like me with a giant ego. I dropped a class in college because the week came for me to share my piece, and I did not want to hear it. And I just never went back to the class because I did not want it to be my turn. And I have obviously come a long way since then, because eventually you get to where you want the piece to be good more than you want to hear people say good things about it. Right. And go to,
I was going to say, that's funny that you say that, because I've been in classes too, and it didn't bother me in classes because they were assignments, right? Even creative writing assignments. But when it was finally, this is my passion, this is my book, then it was like, ooh. That was
someone calling your baby ugly.
Yes.
Can I just add that when punctuation is like your nemesis and a former English teacher is about to critique your work?
Well, I hope as a former English teacher,
there.
I bring more to the table than just like,
I know, that. But that's my biggest thing. I'm like, oh no, John's going to see all the punctuation stuff.
Did you think about that though at our first meeting? The fact that I was a former English teacher,
I didn't know that at our first meeting.
Well, that's probably a good thing then.
But it wasn't even you that like threw me for a loop. It was Rhonda's mom. Said there's a lot of passive voice in here, and I'm here going, what the heck is that?
What's passive voice?
Well, and then you learned, right?
Yeah,
so what's really great about that is you got that feedback, and then you learned what passive voice was. And so the point is that you have to change the goal needs to be to make your piece the best that it can be. And you don't have to receive the criticism. If someone says there's a lot of passive voice in this and you say, yes, and I like passive voice, that's fine too. So there's many ways to graciously handle when you get feedback that is not so positive. And Tina's going to model that for us today, because we're going to do what's called the critique sandwich method. You'll see, if you don't know what that is and you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get a free critique cheat sheet that explains how to give a critique sandwich. And what that basically is you think about your critique like you would build a sandwich. On the bottom is a piece of bread, on the top is a piece of bread, and in the middle is meat. We call it meat, although it could be other ingredients. And the top and the bottom are the positive feedback.
Tina's like what is going to have to be meat-free, dairy-free, oil-free. So
hummus.
Tofu. Hummus.
It's going to be lots of really yummy hummus.
Lot of yummy hummus. But awesome. I like that you said yummy, because honestly, like as we were doing this, like, 'cause it's been a long time since we've done this kind of critique for each other, but I feel like we need it. And one of the things I think that, and we've talked about this in our past podcasts. So if you've not watched or listened to our other podcasts about writing groups, go back and watch them, because there's a lot of good information there. But it's a level of trust that you get to. And you're going to watch us, and we're at the point where we love each other and trust each other, that we know that Tina, if she hears painful things from us today, she's going to know the place it comes from, because we want this to be the best that it can be. And then as we're doing the critique, we're not as scared to give the painful information, if that makes sense. The first few times you do a writing group, until you get that level of trust, it's probably, you're going to get critique, but it's probably going to be a lot of surface, right? Like, it won't. But then when you get to that level where you have people that love you enough to say, you need to do this, or I know you love this character, but you know what I mean? Like, so I hope that as people watch this and listen to this, that they're able to pick up on that and how we do that and see how we present this. So or it could be a disaster. I hope not, because we're gonna do 2 more of these.
I know, right? So in our writing group, what we decided, and you don't have to do it this way, but what we decided was that we would make the person who submitted the piece be silent during the critique, and then allow them to respond to what we have to say when we finished giving the critique. And we're going to follow that model today.
Which reminds me, I need a notebook.
Yeah, we used to joke about putting into the chamber of silence or an isolation booth, but you can hear us, so it really isn't like an isolation booth. And Tina,
if there's something that's like really bad, like you're like, you guys
come out here and tell us,
right? Like exactly. But before we go in, we also ask if there's anything that they want to say to us, and then we ask any clarifying questions before we go in as well. So that helps.
Yeah, Tina submitted us the piece in advance of today's show. And if you want to read what we're going to be talking about, I think Tina's going to make it available to y'all somehow. But we're not going to take the time to read through it. We're just going to start to give the critique. And Tina, so before we send you into the chamber of silence, what feedback are you looking for? Explain to us where the piece happens in the story, and what kind of feedback were you hoping to get today?
Okay, this is the second chapter of my book, and the first chapter is from Angelica's point of view, which is my main character. She sees a girl running down the path. The militia is chasing her. She has a bundle in her arms. She shoves that. Trips, sees Angelica hiding in the bushes, shoves that bundle into her arms, and jumps in the river and is swept away. Angelica discovers the bundle is a baby.
Okay.
So this is the girl who jumped in the river. So this is like the next part. I already know that there's more that I want to expand it. But I'm trying to write forward so that I can go back and see, because I changed my writing process. It's very complicated. I'm doing the developmental edits as I go. So as I'm writing, if I see I need to add or revise something in former chapters, I'm going right away and doing that. Because it's just too overwhelming for me to do it all later. So I did put it through Pro Writing Aid and fixed all the punctuation and stuff that they showed me, but I'm not really concerned about punctuation and stuff.
Okay.
It's more story development, character, that kind of thing that I really want to get right before I worry about punctuation. And obviously spelling needs to be fixed right away, but
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, and so you can mute your microphone. And
Oh man.
Jen, did you think that maybe we should share screen or not so much? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think?
I don't think so. And I think that what we should do is try to offer this in the Facebook group. I think that'd be the easiest way for us to present it. So if you are not a member of our Facebook group, head on over there. It's listeners of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast on Facebook. And that way also our listeners can also comment too. Because we could put it somewhere else, but it'd be nice to get feedback from people in the group as well. Don't you think so, Tina? Why shake a head? I know you're already silenced. So what do you okay.
And then how do you feel about us linking our edited pieces to that same post? You okay with that or maybe not? Yeah, it's good. Okay, so that would be great because then you could see how both Jen and I handled this piece.
As long as we can figure out how to share it where people can see the editing. Because you
Right?
shared,
Yeah.
I don't, I can't figure out how to do that, but we'll figure that out. So that's for us to worry about. All right, I would like to go with my first piece of bread. I thought the punctuation and grammar and everything was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I was not stopped at all with like missing commas or misplaced commas or there was a couple places where like it said like it was listed as 2 words. It should have been 1 word. There's a few, like a couple little things like that literally will come out in copy editing. But like, I was really impressed with how well done the grammar portion of it was done. Did you notice
and I'll
that?
toast that piece of bread and say, I agree.
Yes. And I love this character's name. I think that Tazlina sounds Russian, but could also be at the Baskin. I'm not sure where it comes from because I know that there's like such a connection with Alaska and Russia, but I thought it was a great choice for her name. And I feel like this piece belongs in the series. Like as I'm reading through this, it feels like it's in Angelica's world. And so again, well done, because there's nothing more annoying than reading a second or third book and it doesn't even feel like it belongs in the series. Like that just drives me crazy with books. So I thought that she did that well.
Yeah, and I will say too, I liked the name and thought it was not too weird because I don't, you know what I mean? So that's kudos. And along the same lines, I think that the people who pick up this book are going to be excited to get another in the series. I have that same exact feeling that they're going to really appreciate this because I believe that Tina's readers are really all about sort of like Alaskan adventure, and this is not going to disappoint. There's a lot of promise of great adventure to happen in this book.
Agreed.
All right. And so that kind of brings me into my first piece of meat. And my first piece of meat is that there's a whole lot happening in just these 1,200 words. And because there's so much happening, we're getting all of this backstory about this character and in a matter of paragraphs. And I feel like a lot of these events should potentially be entire chapters, not just she had this experience and she had this experience. Even in my edited copy have just deleted several paragraphs and would prefer that the author just hint that some of these things had happened to her and then show us later in the book that this is this character's backstory. Would you agree with that, Jen?
Yes, agreed. There was a lot of telling rather than showing us. And I feel like I lost my window. Darn it.
No.
There was a lot of of showing us or telling us and not showing us. For example, she told us there. So at one point in there, she tells us that this person had been sold into a harem, and it goes on to the next paragraph, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. Like that's a big thing. Like, and that would be something that if she's actually thinking about that, she's going to be thinking about that. Like if we're inside her head and you're like, and she's being retrospective, like you can't just tell us that she was sold into a harem. Like you got to stop and marinate there. Right. And if, and if you don't, then don't make her sold into a harem, make it something else. Like do something else to where it's not so like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. You read the next paragraph with, which again, to kind of piggyback on what you said, I felt like there was so much, and the order of what the so much was
Oh,
very
yeah.
confusing. So she talks about being sold into the harem. The next paragraph it says her brothers would probably take her in, but she couldn't go there. I'm like, wait a minute, how'd she get out of the harem? What does she do? Like it did not, the flow of it did not make sense to me, and pulled me out of the story often. But again, I think it's because there was just too much stuff happening.
Well,
You know
and
what?
you brought up my second piece of meat, which is when she's talking about that she escaped. I
Mhm.
felt like because you said, well, how did she get out of the harem? And then you find out like at the end of the piece
Yes.
that you're talking about an escape that she had just pulled off. And I had been confused in the very first paragraph. She hoped her ruse paid off. And then by the end of it, I understood that, oh, she had just run away. And so then I suggested that you bump up the bit that says she had just run away, blah, 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 so that the actual order of the events in the chapter have a better flow to them.
Right.
So that was going to
Right.
be another layer of hummus.
I think pacing would help too. I feel like after reading the whole thing, um, I did not feel any anxiety when I was reading it, especially at the beginning. I almost felt like when I was reading it, because I didn't know what was going to happen in the chapter, when she's floating down the river, in my mind, she's floating down the river. And I didn't like, daydreaming is what I thought was happening because I didn't read the chapter before. But I think it's good that I didn't read the chapter before, because I think that if that's the purpose of us, like there need to be some anxiety. And instead of like her just kind of floating down the river, like, and if she wants her to be like inside her head and going back to what had happened to her, then like to pull her back out of it, all of a sudden she hits a rock with her head and she's gasping for air, um and things like that to make you feel more anxious. Towards the end of the writing, she mentions that she's worried about hypothermia. This is after she's out of the water and running up the mountainside. Well, if it's that cold, wouldn't that have been something we would have been experiencing with her in the water? If she chose to go in the water and it's that cold, that should be something like, that she's starting to not feel her fingers and she's worried about hypothermia while she's in the water, I would think. But again, I feel like I don't know the exact purpose of this chapter, probably because
Very good. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
yes, what is the focus? Because there's so many things listed. Like, what is the purpose of this? Is this a main character that we're going to see a lot? If it's not, if we're just getting a little bit of information so we know what's going to happen for this baby later, then there is so much that just needs to be gone. We don't need to know about her alcoholic father, and we don't need to know about brothers and like that unless they play a major role in the story. We don't need to connect to this woman as much as what you would think. Like if she's not a major player, she needs to be more like a remember the little boy at the beginning of the first novel?
Yeah.
We don't know anything about him really, except for like that we're just inside his head about what's happening right then, and we still feel for him because of what he experiences. But if she is a major player, then and if these all these things that she mentions in this writing here are very important, then they need to be treated as important and not just be kind of stuffed all in one chapter, is how I felt. But I don't know what the purpose of this chapter is. Like
Yeah, that's a
there was
good
too much
question
stuff.
for her when she comes back out, because
Yeah.
I completely would agree with you. What is the focus? Because if the
Mhm.
focus is the escape, then the whole chapter needs to be about the escape. And there's not enough internal, I would agree.
Mhm.
There's not enough how she's feeling, her senses. There's a lot of, well, she couldn't think about that because, and when you're self reflecting, you're not like, well, then I was sold into a harem. You know what I mean? Like you
Right.
might think something like, I can still smell his breath. I mean, it's not first person,
Yes.
but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes, because she ends it with further from Ivan who hated her, and I highlighted that. I'm like, how do we know he hates her? How does she know he hates her? Like we don't know anything about Ivan. That would be so much more powerful, like what you said. Instead, like as she's being introspective, like the smell of his breath as he's in her face, and as
yelling at
she's
her, or yeah.
yeah, or
Mhm.
like as she is like, like you don't want to get too graphic, but like he's trying to create an air, like,
Mhm.
and so like without being too graphic, be very artful and only focus on the senses, like the smell of him
Mhm.
and the feel of like his sweaty cheek against hers. Do you know what I'm saying? That would
Mhm.
be so much more powerful than trying to give us all this like backstory of telling us who she is. We don't really need to know all that. It can show up eventually. Like when
Mhm.
like later on, if she's important and will be around later, that as she's talking to somebody, just drop in that she was sold into a harem. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
flashbacks, flashing back to that night in the alley when my father traded me for a sack of coins. Do you know what I'm saying? And then
yes.
it becomes a picture that is pieced together for the reader as they're going along through the story.
Right.
Because this ideal of like this happened and then this happened works in like telling a fairy tale, right?
Mm,
A very short situation where it's like, once there was a cobbler and his daughter had long golden hair and her name was Esmeralda. Do you know what I
right.
mean?
Yes.
Just like factoid after factoid after factoid does not work well. And particularly, I think Tina's readers like a lot of descriptive prose.
Hmm.
If
Yes.
if the purpose is just she ran away and got away, Tina could do a lot more with like describing the things she sees. Maybe an eagle can fly over as she's
Hmm.
floating on her back. Like again, what is the purpose of the chapter? And
Right.
I think that if you have the purpose, maybe even some of what stays and what goes from my version would change. But certainly it would
Yes.
help you to figure out if you're chopping out so much, what do you replace it with?
Hmm.
Well, you replace it with the things that are important. I suspect that what's important in the author's mind is to reveal that this was supposed to be some kind of a promised child. That's
Hmm.
what I took away from like reading it, like the point of it. And also the choice to shove the child at this woman, and the woman in the bushes had eyes that reminded her of her own mother's kind of thing. That deserves like I
There's no,
wanted the
yeah, we don't
pacing.
know like how much how that had to be agonizing for her, even though no matter how much trusting she felt for this person, like she just gave up her child. Like that had to be like it had to hurt, and we don't feel like she's hurting,
It's
right?
more than half a sentence for sure.
For
It's like what
sure.
I wanted was it to be, she's running, she's running, she's running. All of a sudden she sees a savior for her child. And then it's like, oh, but how do I, but here you go. And then she's running, she's running, she's running. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
like you were saying earlier about the pacing, that's what you
Yes.
kind of want to get out of the chapter.
And if we're supposed to be like that, when she's floating in the water, the words about the water and what's happening with her in the water in the river need to be like violent and like scary. And is she gonna make it? Like we know she's gonna make it, because I honestly thought it was a comical scene. Like I thought she meant it to be like ah la 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 la. And then I got right through it. I'm like, that's not what she meant at all. Right. And so but just to backtrack a bit, the whole like the sense of like this guy Ivan and whatever, and us feeling that, but not knowing the whole story is so much better. And we're just like, oh, but why was she with this guy? She could even talk about, he's a chosen child. She can talk about all of that happening, and she's focused on that while hearing people chanting, like if it's a religious thing, right? Maybe make it even grosser that there are people around as because it's supposed to be a chosen child kind of a thing, and make people like really feel bad for this girl. And then later, maybe someone recognizes her and aren't you part of the harem or whatever? And then like people like harem, do you know what I'm saying? Like if you reveal that kind of stuff slower, it makes us feel for her so much more. So it's more about the feelings and marinate places and don't try to put so much in, right? Like give
Yes.
us it in pieces. So
Well, I'm ready to give my second piece of bread and then maybe ask her to come out.
yeah, same.
I just would like to say that the things that are there are going to make this a great story.
Yes.
It's certainly very interesting. Like all of the components are there for an amazing story. And I would say that this reads to me sort of like a snowflake style piece where she knows this is going to be in there and she knows this is going to be in there, and then each of those things is going to be like and in that context it's absolutely a piece with a lot of promise.
Hmm.
And I absolutely don't think that the elements need to be permanently cut. I love the idea of what this piece is showing me. I just like it's absolutely a piece with potential is what I would say about it.
Agreed. and I love the whole promised child kind of thing, and and the whole it feels like a Moses kind of a
Yes.
situation.
Yeah, got
And
water there and a
yes,
child being
and I
rescued. Yeah.
yes, I love that, and I love that what she can do with us, and especially the whole Moses aspect because, like, we know that Miriam was involved and all that stuff, but like we really don't know like the anguish that was happening within Moses's mother, and like we get that opportunity now because Tina's going to write this. That's kind of how I feel. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to reading what she does with this.
All righty. So come on out, Tina, and let us know what you have to say.
I kind of like doing this over the internet because I actually literally have to come on out like by.
You put your microphone back in front of you to help us out to hear
Sorry.
you. That's okay.
I want to thank you guys so much because about 90% of this is you confirming what I already felt.
Hmm.
And because I changed my process,
Mm-hmm.
what you said about the snowflake method, that really is what it's turning out to be. Now, I didn't
Wow.
plan
Okay.
it that way, but I'm just writing down the story, like the details as I see it, and then going back and revising. And I
Mm-hmm.
was so the one question I wondered if the feeling in the river would have been the same if you had read it right after the first chapter. But I still think that I'm going to add some more tension there.
Mm-hmm.
The I'm going to just do this in the order that I wrote it down. Taslina
Mm-hmm.
is the name of a river and a lake in Alaska. So
Oh, okay.
um I have seriously been thinking about the whole scene about having a whole prologue of Taslina in the harem.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Um, the only problem that I see with that is my first 2 books prologues are
Mm-hmm.
totally different than that.
Hmm.
Well,
So
that would be a difficult decision to make until we understand the whole structure of your book. And if
Right.
you're
right,
kind of discovering it as you write it, I think that answer will come to you
I think
as
so
you
too.
get closer to the end.
Good point.
Right. So like I have this idea in mind for a prologue where we see her in the harem. And I just like I know that I want to expand um the stuff about her childhood with her dad, and I know I want to expand the part about the harem. And I just don't know yet where I want to put those things.
Let me ask you a couple questions. Does her
hmm
dad show up at all later in the story?
Yes.
Okay. And does his alcoholism, like, is this become a big part of your story?
I would say not that the effects that it had on her.
Okay.
Definitely.
Because what I'm wondering is I think that what you're trying to accomplish is you're trying to get us to feel and understand her and feel her background. And I think you could do that better with emotions and like little clips of experiences as opposed to telling us all about the alcoholism and and then telling us that she's affected by it. Just show it. You can show
Right.
it. Like her dad walks in the room and she feels like she's gonna vomit and he walks up and all of a sudden she feels like a little child again and she's shivering. We don't even have to know. We just know
hmm
her dad was horrible. Does that make sense? I think that
And
you'll get a lot
actually, if you
stronger.
could see my notes,
Yeah.
I actually wrote "show don't tell"
Okay.
on a couple of those paragraphs,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, I could go back in and change. I had already sent you guys the links, but this was like because what I do is I start reading from the beginning, like every day or the night
Mhm.
before, actually, before I go to bed. And I actually wrote down a couple of show don't tell notes in that whole piece, and
Mhm.
I thought, should I go back and change it before we do the podcast? And I thought, no, because this is something people can see that they can learn from.
Mhm.
Um, and so I left it there. And because I don't know where I want to show that yet. Like I know I don't want it in this
Right.
scene, but I don't know where I want to put it yet. So I've just left it there, and I have
Mhm.
it like highlighted in my
I've
Mhm.
script.
discovered, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what Jen says. If you know her and you know that she grew up with this alcoholic father and these experiences, that's what's important about knowing that she had an alcoholic father. It may not be important that the reader ever even knows that, but you will write her more authentically because you know it.
True. Yes.
So it may, at the end of the day, just be something you need to know about her. You know how they always say, like, how do you write such authentic characters? Well, you go and do this whole character profile. She had an alcoholic father. Da, 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 da. Well, sometimes you just do that in your head. And then you think, well, the reader should know this, but it is not like, do you know what I mean? And so it may just be that you discover over the course of writing her character that this stuff just is revealed to us because of how authentically she's written. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So I appreciate the idea that you're saying, I want to show this to the people and not tell it, but I just don't want you to feel any kind of pressure to be like, now where do I write the alcoholic father scene? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it may just be something that becomes revealed to us with the course of time. And we never got the question answered. Is she like a main character of this book? Like, what's her deal?
Well, she's not. Angelica is still the main character, but she has a major role.
Okay. I would love to see this scene. You go back and try to write the scene and it only be about the river. Like her while she's in the river, a retrospective about like the agony of giving up her daughter, but like really work on making that the anxiety, the anguish, and the pain of the water and how it feels, and like because of that things come out, and like it only be, and then the last thing you write is like she could barely, like her fingertips are so frozen she could barely, but she finally gets herself out. Like we had no doubt she was going to come out, but I want you to write it to where we are scared for this girl because she killed characters off before, so we don't know if she's going to make it, right?
Yeah, yes. I have to say, I forgot this piece of bread. Amazing how she knew the river enough to put her feet out here and then push off. And as Jen was talking about it, I was like, ooh, that could be so good if it's like she pushed off and thought about how she was pushing away from her life with Ivan. And then she grabbed the branch, remembering and hoping that the woman would clutch her child that fiercely. Do you know what I'm saying? So like,
but in your way, but
you could link up the motions that she does in the river with the feelings that she's having inside, and like grah as she is experiencing these emotions, right? So I love Jennifer's suggestion because honestly, you could do about 1,200 words of just like internal in the river. And because then you can get that interplay of like, part of her is actually enjoying this because she was with her, you know what I mean? And it could be a really, really beautiful piece that is focused on the nature and her knowledge of that river, because I forgot to give that piece of bread. I loved that she knew exactly where to put her feet. She knew exactly when the current was going to do this and that to her body. I thought that was really good.
And if you write it like making us think that she's not going to make it, like write it like you think she's not going to make it, I think that you'll find you're more able to get that that anxiety level that you need for the scene.
One thing that I have in my notes that I haven't done yet, because it's going to be, I just need to be in a mental place to do it. I gave up a child in my life, a son. And so I have those feelings to draw on to write that into the story. But it still really feels like it's been 35 years. But it's still raw when I think about it. And I have like this experience of having been in the nursery and the soft colors, like the yellows and the blues and the pinks, and like the peach of his cheek. And then in my memory, when I walk out the door of the nursery, everything's black and white and gray.
That's what you need to write.
And so I'm sorry.
No.
I need to be in a place that I can do that. And I've known that I want to put that in there. But just wasn't, like, there was too much going on with camp meeting and my son getting married, and I just wasn't ready to do it. But it's going to be like, I can draw on that really painful experience.
And that's what's going to make this chapter what you actually want it to be.
Yeah.
I think that you probably were dancing around that, trying to do everything but that.
Yes, I was.
I think that, and it feels like now that you've shared that, that's what it feels like. So I agree with everything Jamie said. Like, we want all this stuff, just not all crammed in here. We just want what you just shared with us. That's what this chapter needs, because she just gave over her baby. That's what we needed.
And instinctually I knew that, but like, it's just hard for me to to spend time in that place.
Well, and there's our focus we were looking for, right, Jen?
Yep. There's the
Yep.
focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Wow. It was not what I guessed, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Tina, do you feel like your back was well fed? Do you have any more things to tell us?
No, I think like I wrote snowflake, yes, in in big letters. Like I hadn't even thought of that. But now that you say that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what my brain is. I'm just letting my brain do what it does without trying to keep it in a box. And that's what it's just doing naturally. So
yes, please don't keep brains in boxes.
Shell says, thank you so much for sharing, Tina. And I double that. Like, thank you so much. And I hope that everyone who's listening or watching this understands, like, maybe even as you're listening or watching, you're like, oh, that's kind of harsh, or, oh, but I hope that now that you've seen us talk with Tina afterwards, you understand, like, this is how it works. This is how a good writing group works. None of the things that Jamie and I shared, we didn't like had anything personal to gain from that. All we want is like what's best for Tina. And I think you guys can all agree that after listening to Tina and us talk, that this is going to be a really great chapter. It's going to be a really, really great chapter. And I'm excited to read it.
And I want to add that nothing that you guys said surprised me. And I think that is what people are going to experience. Like you have, sometimes it takes having somebody else talk it through with you to put into words or into concrete sentences and thoughts what you instinctually know about what you've written.
Right. Agreed. All right.
All right. So now we're going to move on to the feeding of the backs for the podcast. And this is only positive feedback. And so now you'll see the difference, right? This is only accolades and woohoo. Why? Because we set a timer for 15 minutes before the show and had to just randomly write something. Jen, what did we write today? And what did you write for the sprint?
Well, today our prompt was a title or a topic. And the title was, I'm trying to find it. I knew you were going to do this to me. I'm not ready. I don't know why I keep closing things out. Today's topic and title was The Falling Butterfly.
All right.
Because I'm looking in the wrong thing. That's why.
Do you need me
there
to
it is?
Tina go?
Nope,
Oh, God.
I found it. So, let's make it big. Okay. Mine's very short. I did a lot
Mine
of
too.
thinking and a lot of, so here we go. Although Cappy had said he'd meet Colleen at 12:30, it was nearing 1 and still no sign of him. Having completed her business at the bank near 45 minutes ago, Colleen had tired of waiting in front of the bank, avoiding eye contact with any of the townspeople who happened by. She didn't know any of them, and with such limited time left, she found no reason to be civil. She fidgeted with the strings of her reticule and stared intently at the ground, willing the dusty gravel to become interesting enough to hold her attention. It was not, so it did not. So, with a sigh, Colleen finally lifted her gaze to the bustling town around her, her eyes immediately settling on the one place she wished to never set eyes on, the saloon. The ramshackled excuse for a building sat directly across from the bank, which was ironic in Colleen's opinion, since most of her husband's money, the money she had brought to the marriage, funneled straight from the bank into that seedy establishment. Its sign swung by one remaining nail, a faded script that read, The Falling Butterfly. She felt there was some sort of sad commentary regarding the fallen lives that had been produced by the business, but Colleen hadn't the fortitude to dwell on it. She was too busy battling the memories of her life in Ireland, of the little girl she had once been, chasing butterflies across green pastures, dreaming of the 3, 2, 1.
Oh,
that's it.
Well, it's really good. So short, and I can tell like you thought about it. I love that the sign is hanging by a nail. The sign is falling. Just, I mean, it's really, and I love that the money was funneled straight from the bank right across the street to the saloon. And I also would like you to know that because of you, I no longer read the word reticule. Every time I saw that word, I would always read it reticule every time.
I think it's reticule. That's how I've always heard it.
I think you're right. Like, I think you're right. But isn't that funny? Because like, what is one of those words for me? Like hors d'oeuvres was hors d'oeuvres.
Never insult somebody for mispronouncing a word because they probably learned it through reading.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But yeah, so, and also willing the gravel to be interesting. I've been there because, in moments where I'm like, I'm not going to pick up my phone. I'm not going to pick up my phone because I know before I had a phone, like when I was a little kid, I used to just be able to like make my own entertainment. And I crave the ability to do that again. And so I totally related to make the gravel more interesting. How about you, Bambina?
I just love the use of the falling butterfly. Like,
Thanks.
that was so creative. And, like, just to echo what Jamie said about the sign is falling, and then to flash back to her memories as like, in her time of innocence, where she would chase
Yeah.
butterflies. Like, it was a great use of that prompt.
Thank you.
Yes. I loved the very delicious morsel, I would
Thanks.
Yeah.
I
say.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thanks.
All right. And Shell says, great setup, Jen. And also, we've got Piper thanking you, Tina, for your vulnerability and all of that. And then Gigi says, Jen, what great imagery. I can see Colleen standing in this town, seeing the bank and the saloon. Great scene.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate that.
guys. And we appreciate you being here with us today. All right. I'll share mine. And next, the falling butterfly. The falling butterfly was installed on the 5th day of August, 2022. The workmen who mocked its simplistic abstract design as they went about their practiced chore of fastening cabling to the museum ceiling with nuts and bolts had no idea it would outstand them. Likely didn't give the notion of passing thought, as exhibits from new artists like Ramon typically only lasted in the trendy art house for a week or two. One particularly popular display, some fashions worn by a pop star unknown to any of them, but apparently current enough to impress the teenagers in their homes, had gotten a 1-week stint. But there was nothing about the day nor the exhibit that communicated the impending disaster to those unfortunate men, nor to the director of the art house, who stood, tongue clucking and arms folded, marveling for the millionth time about the necessity of trusting such meaty and delicate hands with such an expensive curation, wondering what had happened to the days of artists insisting on self-installs, and absently wondering if her liability insurance was up to date. Nor were there any signs given to the swarms of gaping and pointing school children who came through the art house on August 6th and 7th. Instead, the tragedy fell upon them all as the butterfly portended, but unseen and silent, coming without a grand display of color and gossamer wings. It was sudden. It was quick. If there is anything good to say about the tragedy, it's that no one lingered to suffer. By midnight on August 8th, the art house was silent, the falling butterfly alone, left to reign forever over lesser valued works of modern art, a relic to be marveled over more than 200 years later by a roving band of wanderers from a land no one who had installed her had ever even heard of.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so something catastrophic happened.
Yeah.
And but we don't really know what. And
Right.
so, yeah. All right, so very well done. I love that it was an abstract art piece, really very good use of the prompt. I love that. And that like it alone is standing and it's a falling butterfly and everything else around it fell. Like I that imagery was totally there and I just love that. So well done, Jamie.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was fun.
my favorite part is the ending,
Mm.
where this butterfly is like still there in this dystopian world. And I can just picture that. Like, I watch and read a lot of dystopian stuff, and I have like this perfect picture of that in my head,
Mm-hmm.
of like this beautiful butterfly hanging there, and like everything else is in ruins.
I appreciate that. And if I would have had more time, I would have loved to have crafted more of what it actually looked like, but it was a sprint. So
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Shell says it gave her shivers, and Piper said that's amazing, Jamie. It was so good. Yeah,
thanks,
well done.
guys. I love Fridays.
What I love about this prompt is how each of the type of writing that we do flavored how we use the prompt.
Yes.
Because you wrote romance, and Jamie just writes Jamie.
Yeah.
And
well, I can't wait to hear what you wrote.
Yeah.
I
what do you
am
have to read?
currently reading a fantasy book with dragons in it, so that has really colored, and I don't have my bifocals, so unfortunately, you guys are gonna have to see my face close up so that I can see my screen.
That is not unfortunate.
Okay. The sky above Jania's head sparkled with twinkling lights that seemed to spin and dance. They weren't stars, for the clouds had not parted since the blood moon 2 fortnights ago. Since that day, many strange things were happening. Women sleepwalking, wandering into the wood at night and walking unconscious around the stone monument of a long ago ancestor said to have come down from the heavens riding on the back of a dragon. The fire in the hearth would flare up without warning, though no breeze stirred it. Children's pets ran off and didn't return. True, that happened all the time, but not all the pets in the entire village at the
Mm.
same time. The old shaman had taken a seat in the holy seat, too many seats, in the temple grotto, and not stood back up again, shouting incoherent rantings at the statue of the sacred dragon. And Jania had begun to dream. The dream was about dragons, many of them flying above the village like vultures circling a meal. Lightning flashes in the boiling black clouds and thunder pronounced judgment upon the land. One by one, the dragons swooped low over the village, breathing their fiery vengeance on the buildings, causing their occupants to run out in terror or burn alive inside, their screams cut short by another boom of thunder. Then a light appeared in the sky, slowly sinking toward the village. As it got closer, Jania could see that it was a butterfly, glowing with purples and blues, its wings fluttering gently. That's when she saw that it had the body of a woman, dressed in a sparkling, form fitting blue gown. The woman reached her hand down to Jania, flooding her whole being with hope once again. Jania reached up towards the woman's hand. Just then a dragon swooped, breathing its molten breath, and the beautiful butterfly woman turning her glowing wings black, and then she was falling, her hands still reaching for Jania. Just before the butterfly woman hit the ground, Jania would wake from her dream, her soul filled with dread. She would go outside and look into the sky as if to reassure herself. Tonight, when she came out, she saw the twinkling lights for the first time.
Oh, so cool. All right, so I love that, like, she's dreaming about the dragons first, but then she comes out and she sees the sparkling lights. Like, so well done. Very descriptive with the dragons. Yeah.
I really thought biblical apocalypse, and I just wanted to
Mhm.
say that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, all right. We knew we were going to lose Jamie there for a second. So glad she got to say something there. Yeah, Tina, really loved it. I like I've never read a dragon book other than like Lord of the Rings. That's really the only ones I've read. And
And
so
I wouldn't call that a dragon book. Like there's a
right.
dragon in it.
Right.
But like the book I'm reading right now is about someone who's dragonborn.
Mm-hmm.
So they could have dragon towers or something. I don't know. I'm not that far into it, but it
Mm-hmm.
really colored what I wrote today.
Piper says, "Oh no, how horrible a dream to have. Oh my goodness, what a great ending."
Thanks.
Yeah, I agreed. Very well done. All right, well, I will take over as the host since our host has exited the premises, and I'm going to ask you, Tina. We know your what's up. What's your what's next? What's happening for you the next week?
Well, I didn't sell as many books at camp meeting as I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I still got some left. So I spent about 8 hours this week setting up a shop on my website so that I can sell signed copies of my book. So now I need to figure out how to market that so people
Mm-hmm.
know that I'm selling signed copies of my book. And I need to keep writing, and I'm preparing. On the 18th, I have to go to Washington. So
You have to. It's going to be great. Are you excited to go?
I really hate the traveling.
Oh,
I hate the traveling part, and it makes me so anxious. But
no.
once I get there, I'll be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's pretty much what's up for me. What's up for you?
Well, I am back from vacation now, and I am still mourning, but it's getting better. Every day gets a little bit better. So I have, gosh, I've got edits to do, so I really need to get my focus and gear and get caught up on the edits, because it's kind of hard because I don't have like a really tight deadline now, since it's going to be coming out close to Christmas, which makes it like, oh, I'll get to it. But I want to, my big goal actually this week is to start to get back in a writing habit. I read a lot of books at camp meeting, a lot. I want to say read 6 books while
Oh,
I was
wow.
there in the past week or so, and some fiction, some nonfiction. And I read a couple of Chris Fox's books, which I do recommend. There is some language in them, but it's not terrible bad. But um, I had read some of the books already, but I reread 5,000 Words per Hour. It's just very inspirational for me to get back in a daily writing habit. And so, I guess my big goal this next week is to sit down and write, at least do a 5-minute sprint every single day on top of my editing, and just try to get it back into the daily habit, because that works for me when I do that, when life doesn't like upend me. Right. So
Mhm.
I need to clean my office. If anyone who's watching this, not listening, you can see this mess behind me, all the stacked scrapbooks and things from doing my mom's the video for her funeral. And so I just got a lot of like little things to like make me happy, and to um just kind of, but I need to get life back in order. Piper
Mhm.
says I binge read books when I need a break in life too. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Like I
Mhm.
just like binged like every second I had. And if it wasn't reading, I was listening to an audiobook, or like when I was cleaning or working outside the camper, like I was constantly,
Yeah,
so
I tried to read, but my granddaughter's 5 and
yeah.
she just wants constant she just wants to talk to me constantly. And if
Mhm.
I'm not like focusing on her,
Mhm.
she doesn't like that. So it was hard.
Yeah. My
But and
girls are older. It's a lot different. I was able to go to
yeah.
Bible study. Like I went to all the services before, but my girls were never at a point where I could like leave them and go to the early morning Bible study. And that was so awesome. That was so great.
Yeah, and I forgot to add that the one of the speakers this week was preaching all about faith, and a
Mhm.
lot of the notes I took are going in this book.
That's
Like,
awesome.
it was so awesome. And also I want to add that if you want to purchase a signed copy of either of my books or both, you can go to christinacatane.com and hit the shop tab, and they're in there. So,
Sounds good. All right. Anything else to add?
no, I think that's it.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone who was here. We hope that you got something out of this episode. We plan on putting one of my pieces of writing up on the chopping block, and eventually one of Jamie's as well. So hopefully you got something out of it. So until next week, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye, guys.